The note was still there when I woke up, sitting on Cass's pillow like a tiny white tombstone. Don't hold me back. I deserve better. Her handwriting looked exactly like her personality, sharp, demanding, and completely convinced of its own importance. I rolled out of bed and padded to the kitchen, bare feet on cold hardwood. The coffee maker gurgled to life while I read the note again. 22 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? Not with a conversation, not even with a fight. Just a sticky note that probably cost her more emotional energy than our last anniversary. She finally found a font that matches her ego. I muttered to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzed. A text from my foreman, Big Mike. Site inspection moved to 10. You good? I was a contractor, had been for 15 years, ever since the tech company laid me off. Cass always called it my little building hobby, especially when her HR executive friends came over. She'd introduce me as Eli, he does construction, with the same tone most people reserved for discussing root canals. But my little hobby had paid for this house, her car, and every designer handbag she'd ever coveted. I opened the bedroom closet and started packing. Not just my clothes, hers too. Every silk blouse, every pair of shoes that cost more than most people's rent. I folded them carefully, methodically, the way I approached every job. Measure twice, cut once. The secret phone was taped under her dresser drawer, exactly where I'd suspected it would be. Cass thought she was clever, but 22 years of marriage teaches you someone's hiding spots. The phone was full of texts to T.H. Travis Hawk, that smarmy real estate agent who wore too much cologne and drove a Mustang like he was still in high school. The messages made my stomach turn. Not because of the betrayal. I'd suspected that for months, but because of the planning, screenshots of our bank accounts, voice memos about getting rid of Eli's dead weight, photos I won't describe, but that made it clear this wasn't just an affair, it was a hostile takeover. I loaded both cars, mine and hers, with everything that mattered. Then I drove to the bank. Mr. Mercer, said the manager, a nervous man named Costas, who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. What can I do for you? I need to freeze all joint accounts immediately. My wife and I are separating, and I have reason to believe she's planning financial fraud. Costas blinked rapidly. That's a serious accusation. I handed him printed screenshots from the secret phone. His face went pale as he read Cass's detailed plans to drain our savings and blame me for domestic abuse. I'll need to make some calls, he said quietly. 3 days later, I was back at the bank, sitting in the waiting area with a cup of terrible coffee and a clear view of the teller windows. That's when Cass arrived. She swept through the front doors like she owned the place, all flowing hair and clicking heels. Her friend Sienna trailed behind, probably there for moral support and gossip collection. Cass marched up to the first available teller with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. I watched her face change as the teller explained that her cards had been declined. First confusion, then irritation, then something approaching panic. She demanded to speak with the manager. There must be some mistake, she said loudly, her voice carrying across the small lobby. I'm Cassandra Mercer. I work for Morrison Industries. I have excellent credit. Costas emerged from his office, looking even more uncomfortable than usual. Mrs. Mercer, perhaps we could discuss this privately? No, we can discuss it right here. Why are my accounts frozen? Your husband has filed a petition regarding potential fraud. Until the matter is resolved? Eli! She screamed my name so loudly that every head in the bank turned. Where is he? This is harassment. That's when she spotted me in the waiting area, calmly sipping my coffee. Her face went through several interesting color changes. She hissed, storming over. What have you done? Protected my assets, I said mildly. Amazing what you can accomplish when you actually read the fine print on joint accounts. This is illegal. I'll sue you for everything. With what money? I stood up, suddenly aware that I was enjoying this more than I probably should. Your cards are frozen, remember? But hey, I'm sure Travis can help you out. He seems like the generous type. Her face went white. Sienna grabbed her arm, whispering urgently, but it was too late. Half the bank had heard me mention Travis, and in a town this size, that was as good as taking out a billboard. I left them there, Cass still screaming about lawyers and rights, while Sienna tried to drag her toward the exit. Mrs. Doolin, the town's unofficial gossip coordinator, was in line behind them, absorbing every word with the focused attention of a court stenographer. That evening, I met Big Mike at the Rusty Anchor, our usual dive bar that served decent beer and minded its own business. Mike was already 3 drinks in, his massive frame hunched over the bar like a disappointed bear. "Heard you had some excitement at the bank today," he said without looking up. "News travels fast." "Mrs. Doolin was here an hour ago. According to her, your wife tried to have you arrested for theft, then threw her purse at a teller when they wouldn't unfreeze her accounts. I ordered a beer and considered this. Sounds about right." She also mentioned seeing Cass's car outside Travis Hawk's apartment last night. Said she was there supporting local business. Mike's grin was wicked. "That woman could teach a masterclass in creative reporting." As if summoned by our conversation, Sienna appeared at the other end of the bar, loudly holding court with anyone who'd listen. She was drunk, gesturing wildly as she explained how Cass was finally free to be with someone who appreciates her. "Poor Eli," she slurred to her audience. "He never understood what he had. Cass deserves so much better than some blue-collar nobody. Travis has a real career, real money. He drives a Mustang." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "She's getting herself an upgrade," Sienna continued, oblivious to the fact that her voice was carrying across the entire bar. "Travis knows how to treat a woman. He's taking her to Boston next weekend, some fancy hotel. Says he's going to show her what she's been missing." Mike raised an eyebrow at me. "Think she knows you're here?" "Doesn't matter. This is going straight to my lawyer." We finished our drinks and headed out into the parking lot. The night was clear and cold, typical for Maine in October. Travis's Mustang was parked under a streetlight 2 blocks away, gleaming like a beacon of midlife crisis. "Shame about that car," Mike said thoughtfully. "All that chrome and polish. Seems like it might be vulnerable to environmental hazards." I looked at my friend, 6'4", 300 pounds of construction worker wisdom. "What kind of environmental hazards?" "Oh, you know. Gravity, atmospheric pressure, glitter." 20 minutes later, we'd flattened all 4 tires, soaped cheater across the windshield in letters 3 feet tall, and poured an entire bag of craft glitter through the air vents. The glitter was Mike's idea. He said it would take months to get out, and every time Travis turned on the heat or air conditioning, he'd get a fresh reminder of his sins. "Who knew a little sparkle could ruin a whole midlife crisis?" I said, admiring our work. "Justice comes in many forms," Mike replied solemnly. "Sometimes it's cosmic, sometimes it's crafty." The next morning, Travis discovered our handiwork. According to Mrs. Doolin's Facebook page, he immediately called Cass, screaming about vandalism and demanding she control her psycho husband. Their fight was loud enough that half the apartment complex heard it, and by noon, grainy cell phone video of Travis trying to vacuum glitter out of his car vents was making the rounds on social media. The town's annual Lobster festival was that weekend, and I made sure to be there. Not to cause trouble, just to enjoy the festivities like any other upstanding citizen. The fact that Cass and Travis would almost certainly show up was pure coincidence. I found them at the beer tent, standing close together in a way that was probably meant to look romantic, but mostly looked desperate. Cass had clearly been crying. Her makeup was smudged, and she kept checking her phone like she was waiting for someone to rescue her from her own life. "Eli," Travis called out when he spotted me, his voice carrying that fake friendliness that men use when they're trying not to get punched in public. "How's it going, buddy?" "Can't complain," I said, walking over with my hands in my pockets. "Though I heard you've been having some car trouble." His face tightened. "Yeah, Some asshole vandalized my Mustang, but don't worry, I've got security cameras. We'll catch whoever did it. That's the spirit. Never give up hope. I turned to Cass, who was glaring at me with the intensity of a laser pointer. How are you holding up? Heard you've been having some financial difficulties. You bastard, she hissed. You can't freeze me out forever. I have rights. Absolutely. The right to get a job, find your own place, pay your own bills. Welcome to adulthood. That's when Sienna appeared, swaying slightly and clutching a plastic cup of wine that was clearly not her first. Eli Mercer, she announced loudly. You are a small, petty man. And you, I replied pleasantly, are a drunk gossip who should probably learn to whisper. At least I'm not a loser who can't satisfy his wife. The conversation around us stopped. Even the lobster vendors paused their hawking to listen. Speaking of satisfaction, I said, how's Travis holding up? I heard he's got quite the reputation around town. Sienna's eyes narrowed dangerously. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, just that he's very social. Lots of friends, like Cass's boss, for instance. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Cass went white, Travis started sputtering denials, and Sienna, poor drunk Sienna, blurted out, that was supposed to be a secret. The crowd around us had grown substantially. Mrs. Doolin was there with her phone out recording everything. Several of Cass's co-workers from Morrison Industries were watching with fascination. Even the mayor had stopped by to see what the commotion was about. Travis grabbed my arm. You need to shut your mouth right now. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. I need to do exactly nothing, but you might want to let go before this gets embarrassing. He squeezed harder, trying to intimidate me. It was a mistake. I've been doing construction for 15 years. My hands are scarred from 1,000 cuts, calloused from 1,000,000 hammer swings, and strong enough to drive nails without a tool. When I grabbed Travis's wrist and twisted, he let go immediately. Touch me again, I said quietly, and they'll be scraping you off Main Street. He took a swing at me, a wild, desperate haymaker that telegraphed itself from 3 counties away. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him straight into a garbage can. He went down hard, taking the can with him, and came up covered in lobster shells and beer cups. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Mrs. Doolin was practically dancing as she filmed Travis trying to untangle himself from the debris. That's when Cass's mother appeared. Linda Morrison was old Maine money, the kind of woman who traced her family back to the Mayflower and never let anyone forget it. She was also ruthlessly practical about social standing, which meant she had no patience for public embarrassment. Cassandra, she said in a voice that could freeze seawater, what is the meaning of this spectacle? Cass tried to explain, but Linda wasn't interested in explanations. She'd already assessed the situation. Her daughter was publicly humiliating herself with a man who was currently picking garbage out of his hair, while her soon-to-be ex-husband stood calmly nearby, clearly the victim of an unprovoked attack. I am deeply disappointed in you, Linda announced, her voice carrying across the festival grounds. Your behavior is disgraceful, and I will not have the Morrison name associated with this circus. She turned to me with something approaching respect. Eli, I apologize for my daughter's conduct. You have always been a gentleman, and you deserve better than this. Then she walked away, leaving Cass standing alone in the middle of the crowd, abandoned by her mother, her lover covered in garbage, and her reputation in tatters. The festival incident was just the beginning. Over the next week, Travis's Mustang was towed away. Apparently, the glitter had gotten into the engine somehow, causing thousands of dollars in damage. Cass lost her job when her affair with her boss became public knowledge. Sienna was arrested for drunk driving after leaving another bar where she'd been loudly defending Cass's honor. But I wasn't done yet. I left an envelope at the house, my old house, where Cass was now living alone. Inside was a key and a note. If you want your reputation back, meet me at the Blue Star Motel. Midnight. Bring Travis. The Blue Star was a rundown place on the edge of town, the kind of motel that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. It was also owned by Reggie Morrison, no relation to Cass's family, just an unfortunate coincidence, who happened to be a retired state trooper with a strong sense of justice. Cass and Travis arrived exactly at midnight, probably expecting some kind of private confrontation where they could threaten me into backing down. Instead, they found me waiting in the parking lot with Big Mike, Mrs. Doolin, and about a dozen other people who'd been following the drama with keen interest. "What is this?" Cass demanded, looking around at the assembled crowd. "A town meeting," I said pleasantly. "We need to discuss some community issues." I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made at the bar, Sienna drunkenly bragging about Cass's upgrade and revealing details about their plans to frame me for abuse. Then I played audio from Cass's secret phone, including her voice memos about getting rid of Eli's dead weight. The crowd listened in stunned silence as Cass's own words condemned her. Her plans to claim domestic abuse, to drain our accounts, to destroy my business, all of it laid out in her own voice. That's illegal recording," Travis sputtered. "You can't use that." "Actually," said Reggie, stepping forward with his retired cop authority, "Maine is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." Cass tried to flip the script, claiming I'd been abusive, that she was the real victim. But then Travis's ex-girlfriend stepped out of the shadows. Big Mike had tracked her down and convinced her to come forward with her own story. "He tried the same thing with me," she said quietly. "The affair, the lies about abuse, trying to steal my savings. Travis Hawk is a predator, and your wife helped him target you." That's when Cass and Travis turned on each other. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never seen Cass lose control like this. She screamed at Travis, calling him a coward and a liar. He screamed back, blaming her for everything, claiming she'd seduced him and forced him into the scheme. The crowd watched in fascination as their partnership dissolved into mutual destruction. When the shouting died down, I stepped forward with one final revelation. "There's something else," I said, pulling out a thick folder. Bank records showing that Travis has done this before, 3 times actually, and Cass knew about it. She thought she was getting a partner in crime, but she was just another mark. The folder contained everything. Travis's pattern of targeting married women, his previous fraud charges, even evidence that he'd been planning to disappear with Cass's money once he'd helped her steal mine. Cass stared at the documents, her face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally, despair. "You're lying," she whispered. "Ask him," I said simply. She turned to Travis, searching his face for denial. Instead, she found guilt, fear, and the dawning realization that he'd been caught. She breathed. "You were going to rob me too." "Cass, I can explain." She launched herself at him, screaming and clawing. Big Mike had to separate them while the crowd cheered and Mrs. Doolin captured every moment for posterity. The final confrontation came 3 days later. Cass and Travis, desperate and friendless, returned to the house to collect whatever they could salvage. They found it empty. I'd moved everything, furniture, appliances, even Cass's designer clothes. All of it was now in a storage unit across town, with the bill sent directly to Cass's forwarding address. Her hidden cash stash, the one she'd kept in a coffee can in the garage. Reggie had found it during his security check of the property and returned it to me as lost property. "You can't do this," Cass screamed from the driveway. "This is theft." "Actually," I called from the front porch, "it's recovery of marital assets. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything, and since you tried to steal it all, I'm taking my half first." I held up the note she'd left me 3 weeks ago, now laminated and mounted in a picture frame. "You said you deserved better. Turns out, so did I." Travis made one last desperate play, lunging toward me with his fists raised. I stepped aside and tossed his car keys down the storm drain. "You wanted a ride?" I said with a smile. Start swimming. The crowd that had gathered, neighbors, former friends, random townspeople who'd been following the drama, erupted in laughter and applause. Cass and Travis, humiliated and defeated, slunk away on foot while Mrs. Doolin snapped photos for the town blog. I stood in the doorway of my reclaimed house, Big Mike at my side, watching them disappear down the street. 22 years of marriage, reduced to a pathetic retreat in broad daylight. She said she deserved better, I said to Mike. Guess she was right. She deserved exactly what she got. What she got. What she got. What she got.